Matt Gouge, Get Better Everyday Podcast. I'm excited. I got my buddy Bobby Peterson with me today. Thanks for joining me today, brother.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, offline talked a little bit about the wildness of the real estate market. So I think it's only natural to start there. Maybe give us a little backstory. How and when did Bobby Peterson get into real estate, and what's the journey been like so far?
Yeah, man, I've known you and some other friends, Nick Street and Dan Maybaum. Man, it's been almost 12 years or something like that now.
I think it's 13 or 14.
Yeah, I was in insurance out of college, and I networked with mortgage officers, loan brokers, connected with you and a couple other guys. That's how we got going. I went to a lot of networking events and met folks, and then realized I wanted to be on the real estate side to actually help sell homes where the commissions were a little bigger. Did that, started with a broker that did flips, property management, and sold houses, and started just grinding, finding deals and flips for my broker at the time, and then had some other relationships, met some buyers, and kind of always gravitated towards the investment side of things. And ultimately, 3-4 years later, started flipping houses on my own. And currently we have run a team that helps buyers and sellers. The main thing that we do right now is fix and flips. We do some wholesaling, probably do about 30 or 40 actual flips this year. And then we'll also do a number of wholesales, and then we add quite a few properties in the rental portfolio. So I've been in it for, 10-ish years or so. And every year just trying to find ways to keep moving the needle forward.
Yeah, I love it. I know I told that story to Miguel earlier, where I was like, it was cool. Like, I was first getting into mortgage, and Bobby was on the insurance side chasing me.
Yeah.
When he got into real estate, I started chasing him. And it's cool how, running in similar circles, because we're both going to networking events. I think both me and you realize, like, your network is your net worth. It's a fun cliche, but it's really true, right?
Yeah.
You get around people that are doing high level stuff, and you learn bits and pieces from everybody. So it's been cool watching you do stuff, I think, for the audience, but probably more for me, like, just out of my curiosity. I'd love to hear some of the systems you've built. I'm around a lot of real estate investors, some people doing more than others, but you're somebody that I think people can look at and, like, this guy's built something. You've got your wife, the brains of the operation, on the team helping you. But who else is involved with that team? And then we'll dig into maybe, like, what types of things you guys are doing to create leads.
Yeah, so good question. I was talking with Chris Bauman on the way over here, and he's in, like, a mastermind where it's just business owners, right? It's not necessarily just, people in our industry, in our niche, because there's different levels of the business that you can go. And I'm certainly at a point where it seems like where I'm trying to figure things out, where we have 7 employees, 7 team members right now. 2 of them are VAs. We have an admin. We have someone that helps with dispositions, which sells the properties. We have a couple acquisition people, a lead manager, and then my wife's kind of helping with some operations. So, systems in place where, as far as, like, CRMs, that's obviously the huge one that we utilize. And then, working on Monday is, like, our software that kind of keeps our pipeline and really kind of helps us put in line with what we want to accomplish. Read the book Traction and EOS, which is the Entrepreneurial Operating System. And really we've followed that blueprint to be structured with how we want to operate and make sure that we're accomplishing everything. So tomorrow we're actually doing our quarterly meeting. We do a level 10 meeting every Monday. We do morning huddles every day at 9:30. And then we do the quarterlies once a quarter. And then we do the annual meeting at the end of the year. And I think that's kind of helped, the book Traction is based on just, moving the needle forward, right? And understanding, I think, consistently, there's always issues with a company and a business, and finding those, right? So one of the level 10 questions and for you to, like, brainstorm with your team is IDS, which is identify issues in the business. And that weekly has allowed us to gain some momentum with figuring out things that aren't operating efficiently. We have systems in place, but they get broken a lot, especially when, you're continuing to expand and move the needle forward. So really having that structure on a consistent basis has really helped us, figure things out and collectively solve problems that, the communication channels aren't always super efficient.
Yeah.
So between finding rocks that we want to accomplish every day, every week, and especially the bigger ones quarterly and annually, and then identifying issues has been huge for just finding some momentum with everything.
Yeah. You know, what's cool about that is U Mortgage. We run that. We've actually got an implementer for company wide and weekly L10 meetings and all that. So anybody who knows EOS, I remember first being introduced to it from Matty Atchison.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, this is overwhelming, man.
Yeah.
I'm just like a fly by seat of my pants type of guy. But you know, it shows the level of dedication that you have to your business. And even a small and mighty 7-person team, you know, it doesn't have to be a 600-person organization. Like one thing you said was like disruptions in communication. Like all 7 of you guys are getting on meetings, right? Every morning. And so like, that's going to help. Like somebody doesn't have a problem that turns into like the same issue next month and the month after, because they're communicating it. Everybody, you know, sees it. It's identified as something that we need to solve. We solve it. And then we don't have that problem next month. Unfortunately, you and I both know plenty of people in real estate that like, they just don't treat their business like a business.
Right.
And so I think that probably has a lot to do with the success that you've seen. So, you know, I'd love to know maybe for the steps in between, you know, independent agent, helping people buy and sell, to like where you are today. Like, what are the steps so far to get to where you're at? And then like, what's the path look like going forward next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah. I mean, when it started, it was just grinding, hustling, trying to throw anything against the wall and like get some deals and get some money coming in. You know, the first few years, I think I probably did like 8 or 10 deals as a solo agent the first year. The second year, and half of those were probably finding some investment properties, flips for other buyers. And you and I always connected because I always had a knack for like understanding what an investor is looking for. I helped you find some properties.
Yeah.
A number of people in our industry, right? Like mortgage, realtors, like everyone's a buyer, right? Appraisers, title people, like, hey, here's a deal, like here's an opportunity, here's something that makes sense. So obviously the networking piece, but the first few years, really just grinding it out, doing the solo agent tasks and general things with open houses, calling expired listings, calling FSBO, stuff like that. And then I started figuring out that getting some flips from attorneys, some distressed properties from attorneys, hard money lenders, and and then actual agents. So understanding like early on, obviously networking's always been a huge thing, but I always wanted to create like referral sources. How I met you was I was, you know, networking with you to try to get some homeowners insurance referrals, right? Same with how we, you know, vice versa, how it kind of got flipped and you're looking for deals for me from the lending side. So as a realtor, I felt it was kind of tougher, right? Like, let me find some attorneys that have resources to give continuous sources of referrals. The hard money lenders, you know, sometimes they have buyers that are looking for deals and I could help them. And then also, you know, other agents that ended up just being how we'd find some fixers, right? So networking with agents was early on as an agent, like how do I get some deals, getting referrals from agents to find fixers. So really years 3, 4, 5, 6, I guess, I was, you know, maybe doing 20, 30 traditional deals at a time and slowly started to build up the flipping business where I was doing 3 deals. I did 5, then 10, and then 15. And I was kind of plateaued. I was doing, you know, about 12 to 18 deals a year for about 3 or 4 years. And then I realized that I didn't want to do the traditional side anymore. It wasn't my highest, best use of time. I was probably spending 80% of my time working with buyers and sellers and maybe 20% of my time on the flip business, but I was making more money on the flips.
Yeah.
So, you know, had some kids, I got married, my wife and I merged our teams and whatnot. And when, you know, I wanted to get out of the traditional sales business, but I was unable to because I didn't want to leave the business hanging while she was like out on maternity leave and stuff like that. So when she came back, it's really been 2 years that I've put like full focus into flipping and growing that business and going to masterminds, investing in coaches, coaching programs, and probably been in 3 different coaching programs in the last 2 years, spent like a number of dollars on it, and then, you know, implemented EOS maybe about a year ago, and running it like a business,
Right.
as you said. Where
Yeah.
I've been gunslinging for so long and just kind of figuring things out, and then finding myself and my identity as a leader too. Like for so long, I struggled with that. I was just put my nose down and sell.
Mhm.
Right. I could go network. I could talk to sellers. I could make deals happen. I wanted nothing to do with training people and running meetings and delegating. I was like, I'll just do it. And I was younger. Right.
Mhm.
And then you get a little older and realize you need to delegate. You need to be able to communicate better with your team and fix all these problems that are within the scope of our industries. And having guidance through all that has been huge. And I think my leadership has gotten a little better, right? And every year, obviously, the more people you is in your ecosystem and that you're guiding, like you're naturally going to get better, but a long ways to go for sure.
Yeah. It's getting better every day, man. That's what it's
Yeah.
about.
Yeah,
Just
for
a little
sure.
bit better every day. And so I love digging into this stuff because I think, people who are entrepreneurial and like business, like I could talk about this stuff all day. So you've got Afton handling traditional sales, and her team kind of handles that stuff. You're out there looking for acquisitions, and you're figuring out where to spend marketing dollars to bring in leads.
Yep.
You explain the makeup of the team, but remind me again too, like, you're spending marketing dollars, deals are coming in. You got a couple different acquisition people calling them, setting appointments up for you to meet with sellers. How does that work?
Yeah. So we do pay-per-click, we do mail, and we do quite a bit with like referrals still with agents and all the above, attorneys. But yeah, so we send out various pieces of advertising. We'll get the phones to ring, or we got to call people that click on websites. And then I have a lead manager and one acquisition guy, right? So the lead manager will take the call, set the appointments, and the acquisition guy will go to the houses and negotiate with the sellers and set that up. We have a virtual lead manager that's more on the nurturing side. If the leads are colder and it seems like there's nothing more immediate. So that's kind of it. Like our KPIs the past couple months is anybody that raises their hand, like we're going on an appointment. For a while, it seemed that we were overqualifying people and maybe not getting in the front door for various reasons. So we've been going on about 35 appointments a month for the past couple months. And, then it's all a metric of how many conversations you're having, how many appointments you're making, how many offers you're making, and then what's your conversion rates. And then you're able to, analyze that at the end of the month and figure out, what's going right. Where do we need to work on? Is it a sales problem? Is it a lead problem? Is it, able to coach and kind of guide everybody through those problems then?
Yeah, it's awesome to hear because there's so many similarities. And like, as I grew my mortgage business, it was this type of stuff that helped you grow and get better.
Yeah.
The level of detail, and I can tell without even like looking under the hood of your business, like you guys understand how many leads you're getting, how many appointments you're going on, how many deals you're closing.
Yep.
Most loan officers, most real estate agents wouldn't even know, right? They might tell you their yearly production. They might know how many deals they close, but like you ask them how many people they talk to, how many appointments they went on, like it's just not being tracked. And so, that's another reason why.
And that's the difference between a business probably and a solo operator, right? And like, what level do you want to grow it to an extent?
Yeah. So what's your plan? What's the growth plan? What's 5-10 years from now look like?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I don't really know because every year, I mean, keep breaking through barriers, and I never thought I wanted to be here, like for sure. Like the amount of marketing dollars that we're spending right now, it's crazy. I thought it was overwhelming like years ago, and I thought it'd be challenging, but it ends up being like a math equation, right? You're pulling levers, and obviously, market dependent, but you put X amount of dollars in marketing and you get X amount of appointments and X amount of leads, and you just work it backwards. So I joined a mastermind called Collective Genius, and there's guys in there doing thousands of deals, right? There's home builders in there. There's guys that own 5,000 to 10,000 apartments. Like you get in these different rooms and different environments, and it's like your perspective completely changes.
You're like, oh, my 20,000 a month sounded big, and now it sounds piddly.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I literally went in there with like a marketing budget of like 15, 20,000. And I'm going to the guys in there spending $1 million a month. Like absolutely insane. This guy in Arizona. And they do like 1,000 deals a year, right? Just in Arizona. Then they have a Southern California division doing like 500 deals a year there. So obviously, like my threshold of what I understood of what's a reality completely changed. I was like, man, this, as long as it's fun, I feel like just keep going. So we've doubled the business the past couple years, and we do anticipate to grow, I think like 35%. You start to get to a point where I feel like you can't just double business, but
Yeah.
certainly continuing to grow. I don't know. I think a $5 million like gross business is what is on the horizon for about 3 years out. And I don't know after that.
Yeah. That's another follow-up question too, because, double the business, then grow 35%. Obviously the bigger you get, the harder it is to grow at the same rate, even though, a 35% jump might be a bigger jump than a former double. What about the real estate market? Cause I think that there's a couple different ways to look at this. Traditional agent, or, maybe somebody in the mortgage business is like, hey, the market's kind of slowed down, might be a little bit tougher for first-time home buyers. Well, there might be double the opportunity for, strategic investors or people who are looking for, to find a win-win for, a seller who might have a distressed sale or something. So what does the market look like over the next 3 years for you for that specific part of the business?
Well, it's crazy. Like one of my good friends I grew up with, his dad was a bankruptcy attorney. And I remember he didn't do great during the good times. And then, I remember when I started understanding finances and economy and stuff like that, it was, 2007, 8, 9, like it was booming, right? He was booming. He was crushing booming, it, right? Sure, 5, 6, 7 years, whatever. And then steady business for a while, right? And then, things picking up, right? Past couple of years. And oddly enough, I bring that up because our sales business is in the dumps this year. And part of it, I've taken focus off. My wife's juggling kids. Like we're more referral based, not a huge focus. We were doing about 110 deals, probably about 3 years in a row. We were in the 100 range, helping buyers and sellers. And we'll probably end up 45 or 50 this year. Huge drop, 50% decline. And obviously, the industry's down 30, 40%. So it's challenging. The investment business has continued to find opportunities. And I think, investors can find opportunities in down markets, right? Where we're selling properties off market distressed at a discount, right, to other investors at times that still want to either flip properties, like, or other investors that are buying properties for rentals and keeping and whatnot, and know that this is maybe a lower price point than they could get in another year or two. So we've had, obviously, it's been an amazing year, yet the actual flips that we put on the market, like we talked a little bit earlier, giving a lot of concessions away. Properties are sitting on the market longer. We buy everything with hard money, right? Which is a high interest loan, private financing, and that eats away at our profits. So we've had best year that I've ever had, and still it could have been like X percentage better if obviously the market would have been going our way. And a lot of us in the industry feel the same way. So where's the market going? I feel next year, I guess people are waiting on the election. Like just kind of what you hear. Yeah. Interest rates came down a hair, but it didn't really affect any buyers jumping off the fence. So I'm excited for next year. Traditionally as a fix and flip investor, you start buying in the winter. You buy in late October, November, certainly December. And sometimes you get deals because people are sleeping around the holidays. But then it takes 2-ish months to rehab a property, and then it's on the market in January, February, and in the spring. And that's like that perfect formula there to make money versus, even a couple months ago, you start getting into July and August, you're like, oh shoot, if I buy this, it's going to be ready November, in October, November, and that's kind of the worst time. So I've been on a volume game this year and really buying properties. And at times, like I'll just throw it on the market as is because or just paint it, clean it out, just have it lender ready, right? So it's financeable. And then that end buyer, right? They're seeing an attractive property, an attractive price that maybe they'll take care of some of those home improvement repairs later down the line versus let me doll it up try to go for max value, and then it's sitting because people can't afford that price point. So certainly finding that buy box has been super important.
Yeah.
And then honestly, just going for speed. Like if I leaving some money on the table, but I can keep turning more properties, that is a better equation.
Yeah, I
That
think
makes
too,
sense.
it's interesting because I'll talk to somebody who's, got a day job or they're, full-time in something, real estate, mortgage, and it's like one flip a year. They're trying to squeeze every last dollar,
Yeah.
but somebody who's trying to, scale it and multiply, it's like, all right, if I can get out 14 days earlier, I don't care about throwing a $5,000 credit at them, right? Like let's just throw it and let's go. And so I want to lean into like some of the market talk, because so much what you say is true. And I don't think people talk about it enough. Like the market for buyers, it's tough. For sellers, I think it can be tough too, because a lot of them are just they don't want to come to terms with reality. And then they're on the market for 77 days. And they're like, why am I on the market for 77 days? I'm, below the median. My house is nice, but part of it, like you said, could be people might use that, like we're pressing pause, we're waiting to see what happens with the election, the economy. And, but it's interesting. You brought rates up. In my world, like that's all people want to know is like, what are mortgage rates at? What are they doing? What's the future of them? The truth of the matter is, as much as we want to pretend that like rates came down, buyers came out of the woodworks, like I almost feel like there's some like misleading data out there about like mortgage applications are up week on week. There's not this flood of buyers. There's not like a ton of buyers out there actively, putting in offers. It feels slow. And I think that, me and you can be honest about it. Like I've done 1,500 real estate transactions. And so, like, I feel like I got a good finger on the pulse of what's going on in the market. And, while my business is doing okay and I'm going to survive, it's not like, we're shutting down the doors and calling the bankruptcy attorney, but it's slower. And so I guess, from one perspective, I think that almost bodes well for the investor side of your business. I mean, I can't tell you how many calls I get where people are like, I'm $100,000 in credit card debt. I got to figure out how to put a HELOC on this thing. They might not be able to, they might, have credit challenges where they can't get a home equity line of credit. I've got some people that I'm talking to now that they have like an equity share agreement with Unison or some of these other companies. Like people are just stuck
borrowing.
And I think to myself, like, this is one of those scenarios where, the friends I have that are in the space that are looking for creative ways to, help these borrowers get out of a situation that they're in, whether it's, they're moving out of state to find cheaper living or move closer to kids. And so I guess here's a question I asked Miguel earlier. And I think, I'd love to hear your take on this too. Maybe even tell us some stories on like putting those deals together where you're finding something off market and you're helping the seller probably get rid of a problem, because how, like, much as we love real estate and it can be a great thing, like for some people it's a headache and it's a problem.
I just got my first lawsuit as a landlord. So
there you go. Yeah.
There's some problems.
So much fun. Where's that property?
It's in Southland Park, man. Like, and crazy enough, like, tenant moved out like 8-9 months ago, and a lawsuit shows up in our email or whatnot. And we had a property manager, and there was some mold when she moved out, but she never notified us like during her tenancy there. And apparently that's not sufficient, where there's reasons that could have caused her for, I forget the term of the eviction, but she up and left because of there being mold there. And we should have known about it and been aware about it and done more checks on it. Even though obligation in California. So
to know about problems that exist that aren't brought to your attention.
Correct.
Sweet.
And this is first, I had a conversation with the attorney, but as you say, like, what are some of these stories and problems that some of these landlords have? One, being a landlord in California is super tough. You got the eviction laws. You have, obviously everyone's sue happy here in California. So that's like a big problem. But beyond that, that's just on the investment landlord side. where we're seeing a lot of people just are done with California for a number of reasons and want to park their money in other states. On the side of like the market, right? We've done more creative deals this year, not a ton, probably 4, but probably more to come with some of our marketing and us understanding what we can do. No, it's probably about 6. So we've done some subject to deals, right? Which is kind of the big buzzword these days. And Pace Morby's like the godfather of this stuff, where we've assumed their current mortgages because they have no equity in the property. And then we've taken them on, and at times we've kept the rental ourselves because we got a good interest rate, or we've assigned and sold that property to another buyer for a fee, and they're able to acquire that property for $10,000 or $20,000 down, right? Which is not normal. Normally you buy an investment property, you're putting 20-25% down. So that's been a situation that we've encountered a couple times this year. We've partnered with sellers, and this has been more common where they don't want to, so many people that we talk to, they don't want to list the properties, right? So it's like, what's their other options? Here's our cash offer. Like that doesn't make sense for them. So what we've done is we've kind of done a joint venture with them. We've established a price that makes sense for them. And because of the hard money points, the carrying costs, because of all of that, it doesn't make sense to make them a cash offer. So we've taken on their mortgage, or maybe they don't have a mortgage, and we'll put money into their house, invest, bring it up to current standards with what people are looking for. Sometimes it's floors and paint and clean out, right? Put it on the market. And we've been able to kind of handle that situation in like 2.5 to 3 months versus, the general one where you got the carrying costs, you got the acquisition costs, it costs a lot more. You have way more risk. So those are just a couple ways that we've been able to be more creative. And for us, like we get probably 200 leads a month, right? And obviously we're not the perfect scenario for all of them. We're trying to have more tools in our tool belt to offer people for their unique situation. Because the cash offer is great for some. Maybe it's the subject to option for others. And maybe it's like the joint venture partnership for others that makes the most sense because they could put a little more money in their pocket if they're patient.
Right.
If they can wait 2 to 3 months.
Yeah.
The other thing we're seeing, there is a lot of debt. There's the banks aren't messing around anymore, right? Like for the phase where I was probably more into investing and starting to realize things like, they weren't foreclosing during COVID and 2 years after, whatever. Like they're not messing around the past like 18 months, and maybe it's been beyond that, but we're seeing a lot of properties go into foreclosure, and there's different opportunities to help the owner before it goes to auction, or come up with a solution for them if they're keeping their property for a short period of time and selling. So there's a number of different ways and things, and the foreclosure laws in California are pretty wacky too. So today's world, if you buy a house at the auction steps in California, you write that cashier's check to the trustee, your money could sit in a bank or just in a holding account for like 90 days. And you won that property, you were the highest bidder at the auction, you put in your cashier's check. 90 days, there's a grace period or rescission period where they let that homeowner buy back the property, or they let, I think, a family member or a tenant or something like that buy back the property. So there's all these people that get first right of refusal. And then a nonprofit is next in line. They get an opportunity to buy the property. And if they don't buy it, then you can buy it. Meanwhile, your $300,000, $400,000 cash is sitting in a trustee's account.
And it might just be after 3 months, like, nah, nonprofit, got it.
Yeah, I have
Here's
no
your money
idea
back.
how people are making that like strategy work anymore. So California's got a number of funky things going on, specifically in the real estate world. Tenancy, landlord, auction properties, where they're definitely trying to help people out that are on hard times. And it makes operating as a business owner a little challenging for sure.
Yeah. As a lifelong Californian and a business guy, I know firsthand that it's not the easiest, which is funny because I want to talk to you about some of your personal investments. I know you have personal investments in California, so part of you likes the pain, man. What's the latest on on that fun project you got going on. Is it
Olivehurst.
Olivehurst? Yeah, it's like 11 or 14 units or something.
Yeah, it's 11 residential, 3 commercial, and like office. And then it's the cool part. It's on 3 acres. It's zoned mixed use. It's got commercial zoning, industrial zoning, and residential zoning. So the land can be pretty valuable as well. Where there's 2 acres in the back that pretty much touches another street that we could get creative on. That particular one, like I feel it is a massive headache, right? Why am I buying in California? The main reason buying in California is it's my backyard. I know how to find properties here, and I have contractors here. At some point, maybe down the line, maybe move into like another state. That makes more sense. But the Olivehurst deal, there was the previous owner. I think he had some health issues, maybe some drinking issues. Had about 14 tenants there. Basically, none of them were paying at one point. They're basically squatting, took advantage of the guy. Code enforcement came, kicked everybody out, and boarded up the place. And they were going to condemn the property. So they were looking at like knocking down buildings if somebody wasn't going to do something about it. So I was negotiating with the guy for a couple months, and he wanted like $1 million, $1 million plus. And I was like, no way, not going to do that unless I got some super great creative financing terms. I was like, I'll give you that if you give me like 0% interest.
For 40 years.
Yeah, I was like, do something like that. It was like, and you wanted to live in one of the units. It's like, sure, live in one of the units, 0% interest, like done. You're going to stipend. Like I can make this crazy price work for you if it's on my terms, right? That didn't happen. He ended up passing away. Again, had some health issues. County was going to condemn the properties. I'm working with the son. We basically worked out a price for $500,000, right? They carried 90%. So I put down like 50 grand. I had to take care of some back liens and everything. So the structure of it was pretty crazy. I think it ended up being like 35,000 a unit. But obviously you get a good deal like that, it comes with a lot of hair. So the code enforcement, they took all the electrical panels out, and working with PG&E is quite the hassle when you're trying to get electrical back up and running and panels hooked up, especially in an investment property. If you're the homeowner, you can get them to come out pretty quickly, but they don't care about landlords and time frames and all that.
Big fancy landlord.
Months out. So the power squatters came in, or nearby tweakers or homeless came in. They cut all the wiring right out of the property. They're cutting out the copper and selling it for whatever they needed to do with it. So we had to basically rewire the property. We had plumbing issues. The well was contaminated from a nearby gas station, actually. So we had to hook the water up to city utilities. So massive headache, right? And I keep thinking to myself, why am I doing this? Why do I put myself in these? Because it's a distraction too, right? Like stay focused on my fix and flip business, stay focused on the wholesaling business that makes money, that's got the conveyor belt, that we created the systems that keep going. This over here is a distraction. It's taking time away. And ultimately, knowing internally, like there's the tax benefits of owning real estate. And I think that's what I'm like summing it up to these days, because I don't really cash flow any of my properties. Like we do own 50 units in Sacramento area, and none of them cash flow really, maybe a little bit, nothing to brag about, but they've all created depreciation, right? And then you get some of these properties, something like this, bought it for 500. I'm probably going to put 400,000 into it, right? I'm going to borrow 400,000. I got the seller to carry like 450. Most of this money is not coming out of my pocket, and actually 1031 sold the property, rolled it into this one. So I'm going to get like a very nice tax advantage for the depreciation that's going to help offset my active income next year because of this massive headache. So that's like the main reason. And I just stick true to that, where I'm looking for assets to depreciate and offset my active income, knowing that this is going to appreciate over time. But ultimately owning here, like it's just an appreciation game and it's a tax game for sure.
Yeah. I think that's one thing that people who are playing the long game, I look at it as a math nerd, and I'm just like, if the stuff goes up 5 or 6% a year, the debt gets paid down, you know, 50, 60, $70,000 a year. Like it doesn't take long before you start seeing, you know, 7-figure gains.
Yeah.
In California, especially because properties are just worth more. So to wrap up that fun Olive Hearst deal, like upon completion, what's that thing going to be worth? Like,
I think around like 1.5, maybe 1.4, and
Yeah.
I'll probably be into it maybe $1 million almost.
Yeah.
So nothing crazy for the amount of work that I'm putting into it, 300-400. But there's also the land there that I have a vision I could do like self-storage on, or I could just put gravel and have like RV parking or boat parking or stuff like that. Or I could build more units,
yeah,
right? Like having the ability, and it is in a spot in Olivehurst. It's downtown Olivehurst. Not that there's a ton going on there, but it's right off the exit. There's an AM/PM, a Walgreens, and a Little Caesars like right next to it. So it's not super rural. And obviously, as we continue to develop, it's going to be something my kids probably will appreciate
Yeah.
down the line. I think you introduced me to the property manager out there in Yuba, Jay.
Yeah.
And dude's like a magician that I never hear from.
Yeah.
All my Sacramento units that we have with property managers, I always get phone calls. I feel like we're micromanaging, but Jay, we do pay a little more, and he just gets things done.
Oh yeah, he does, and he's got all the contacts to get all the
so,
work.
So
done.
he's working on this whole thing.
Right?
Is
he
probably
really?
pulling his own hair out on. He's a little, maybe a little slower on it, but I don't have to deal with it to an extent, right? There's still like some logistical things that I'm still involved with, but I didn't want to like manage the project at all like I normally do with our flips. And I also, like, as my wife thinks I'm absolutely nuts, like, I was like, we know that we don't hear from Jay. Like, that was the only sounding board of like, do we want to own any more units? Because she actually kind of handles them to an extent here in Sac. And the 5 units that we have in Marysville, like, I hear from him once a year.
Yeah. Yeah. I called Jay just to get a 5-minute phone call to say, hey, what's up? How's it going?
It's usually a 10-minute phone call.
Yeah. Yeah. And
he's a talker.
Right. But yeah, that's where like people ask about real estate investing, and you're like, ideally you've got stuff that's appreciating, the mortgage getting paid down, you're getting some cash flow, and then there's minimal issues because you've got somebody else managing it. And that's the thing too. I'm happily paying 8% to a property manager, so I don't have that headache and distraction. Because like your main gig, keep your main gig your main gig. I think that's the saying. Those are 1 or 2 bedrooms.
There's 4 or 5 2-1s, 5 2-1s, 6 1-1s, and then 3 offices. I have no idea what to do.
Yeah, so probably like
there will be some good cash flow. Like I will cash flow maybe like $4,000 or $5,000 in theory, right? It's all theoretical.
Yeah,
because of the money rolled into it. And I sold a dead asset, right? Like I had an asset in Oak Park that I had a ton of equity from. We kind of Airbnb'd it, but we were breaking even. I was breaking even for years. I had quite a bit. I had $400,000 in equity, and it was like, I'm earning the appreciation, but I'm like, I wanted to roll that money into something that had the ability to force appreciation more and actually get a return on it, right? So that's where this is. So, excited to see when it's done, and more excited to see how it helps my taxes next year.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you took on that project. And you're like, it's hopefully it'll be worth it one day. Maybe your kids will reap the benefits of all the hard work. What about the other apartment complex? Was that North Sac?
Yeah, that one's in Rio Linda, and that's probably why my wife hates rentals right now and wants to sell it. But we did a cost segregation
This is a podcast on all the fun in real estate.
Yeah, I think I called you about going in on that one, and your wife's probably grateful that did it.
You might have saved my marriage, man.
Yeah, dude.
I talked to somebody, and I do remember I was like, man, I was regretting, like, instead of doing this or that, maybe I should have partnered with Bobby. But
not that one. Not that one. I bet it's probably pretty much I would say my worst purchase on paper. But then again, we did the cost segregation analysis, where you accelerate the depreciation, and we got a $400,000 write-off on our taxes, right? So last year we didn't pay any taxes, right? I didn't buy any real estate the year before. So this year I have a massive tax bill, right? So then it's like reaffirming, like, okay, I do need to buy a property. I do need to offset my taxes. Otherwise, you're just going to keep
Ship your
paying the
money off.
piper. Yeah, so it's might as well invest in something. But that particular property, I bought it. Was it 22? Literally when last, the only good thing about it is the rate's good, right? I got like a 4.25 rate on a 5-year arm. Hopefully, in another 3 years, rates at least get in the fives or something.
They coming back down.
Yeah. So I should be okay. And that rate is the only thing good about it, right? We've had their upstairs, downstairs units, right? Which you hear historically from savvy investors that it was built in the 60s, right? So you got galvanized pipes, properties sitting on top of each other. So we've had the leaks in the upstairs bathroom drizzle down into the downstairs unit, had to put people in Airbnbs. We've had to evict probably about 4 or 5 tenants, which took about 6 months. We've had issues with people just dropping trash, across the street because it's a C-class property, which means it's not in a good area. You don't have the best quality of tenants. We had people smoking and drinking in the parking lot and everything you could think of. Like we had the bad tenants that caused the good tenants next door to leave. Like it was pretty much everything wrong that you hear with real estate is what we did on this one. And for me, I was like, oh no, but it's like 130 or 140 a unit. We're going to HELOC our house. So we took a bunch of equity out of our house, talked my wife into that. I was like, yeah, these things sell for 180, 190 a unit, right? So you do a couple things, the rents are just low and then it's going to be great, right? I would totally sell that thing in a heartbeat. You always get cold calls and texts of people reaching out. I'm like, give me, 2 million or so or 2.2 and it's yours. But then did that cost segregation. So you're not stuck, but you got to roll it over. Otherwise you're going to repay the taxes.
You got to recapture that depreciation. And
yeah.
pay the taxes,
So you got to roll it into something else. And, not sure what the next play is there. It's been a little smoother lately, but yeah, I mean, between that and this other 14 unit, 11-ish one, up to 50 units. And I know people talk about the apartment game and the multifamily, bigger multifamily. I have not mastered it. And it's probably the quality of properties that I'm buying, right? And the C-class property. And really, all the properties that I do own, my wife and I own, Southland Park, Oak Park, like good, like, B-class, whatever neighborhoods, North Oak Park area where it is. So it's near the med center and stuff. So a lot of areas that are solid tenants, working folks, not a lot of Section 8, not a lot of BS, like good tenants, limited issues.
Right.
And then you got the bigger ones where, of course, I don't have the money to buy at that higher price point, but I think it's a good deal. And you're dealing with every single thing in the book that they say, like, be cautious of and maybe don't do this.
Right.
And I've done it all.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's cool to admit it and have people hear it because Mike Zuber said this on a call we had. And, Mike Zuber's got single family, he's got multifamily, he's got 180 units in Fresno. The one thing somebody asked him, like, what did you learn going from single family to multi? And he was like, you would think going from 4 units to 40, it's like 10 times as many calls. But he's like, it's 100 times the calls. There's just something about that many units and that, like, short of a proximity, like the type of tenant in general, who's living in those properties, like there's just going to be more issues with collecting rent, with hassles with their neighbor, breaking the rules, whatever it is. And so it's not like, oh, I've got 4 tenants in a 4 unit, or I've got 4 single families and those 4 tenants are going to have this many calls and this many issues. Like you get into the multifamily stuff and it just exponentially, the problems that you're going to encounter. And so, yeah,
I wish I would have heard that call 2 years ago. I don't know if it would have changed. I'm pretty stubborn and hard-headed, but
yeah.
I totally can understand that 1,000%. Cause it's not just, if it's just the 14 toilets and the 14s, whatever, I could deal with that. But it's like, you got 14 people in a small space and there's a ton of issues going on with that.
Right. Yeah. Not just with the property, but the, interpersonal, conflicts. I had, as much as Jay has taken 99% of the burden off of me, I did have at I Street, tenant disrespected other tenant had their son come, and you mess with my mama, you're going to get me. And so you had some fighting. And
I don't
so,
know how he does it, man. I think he's got 400 units, all like in the Yuba County, and a lot of them in Linda and Marysville and Olivehurst and Oroville. And the dude seems pretty sane.
shout out to Jay, man.
Dude,
Just
1,000%.
level-headed, keeping it cool.
Property management is probably one of the toughest pieces of our business, and like underappreciated, because they can't make, they can't get super rich off it. Right. They're dealing with, especially if they're in that C class kind of a tenant, like you're dealing with people maybe a little less educated, maybe more looking for handouts, maybe just in general, like
harder to deal with,
more open to sue people, or not have like an understanding of certain things. So, we've had our issues, and I think he does like an amazing job, and obviously not to like put everybody like in a category per se, but you're going to have more issues in those class properties.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like we just put on a master class on like, real estate is a great asset class, and there's all the sayings about, how you create wealth through real estate, but it's not all sunshine and rainbows.
No.
And I think the funny part is, even after this hour that me and you spent talking about problems and issues and stress, like I would continue to invest in real estate. I'm going to continue to invest in real estate in California, because like the upside,
the appreciation's bananas.
Oh,
like
nobody
except everybody on the coast seems to see the
over the last 39 years, California has appreciated on average 6.9% a year.
Yeah.
And so I tell people, like, owning $1 million in real estate in California is like 2 properties. It's nothing. Yeah. And that's $69,000 a year in appreciation. A dummy like me from public school me and my wife own a few properties, collectively $3.5 million. 6.9% of that is like $250 a year.
Yeah.
Like on autopilot, sleep, wake up, it's $250,000 a year in the appreciation.
Yep.
50, 60,000 a year in debt pay down.
Yep.
So it's like every 3 years I'm creating a new $1 million in net worth just by like surviving.
Yeah. It's the silent bank account for sure that just keeps growing. And like even the past 12 months, I think I saw Brian Lundquist stats. It was like we went up 2 or 3% the past 12 months, I believe. It was like 2%.
Probably, yeah.
In a terrible market. This is a bad market. We went up 2%. So it's like, I don't know if things will hit the fan ever here. Like maybe obviously if debts grow too much, but like the potential is just crazy. And it's tough to not invest here, and at the same time it's tough to invest.
Yeah. Well, I want to put a bow on this too, because I think, like, based on what I've heard, and I know for me personally, it's like you never know what lies in the future 10 or 20 years. But listening to smart investors, and you get in plenty of rooms, sometimes people hold these California assets, let that appreciation build, and then 10 years from now you own these 50 units you currently have, but you've got $3.5 million in equity. And you take that and you go to some, commercial triple net lease somewhere else where it's like Walmart's your tenant, right? And there's no headache, no calls, and you're just $30,000 a month on autopilot. Do you have any thoughts of like maybe that's a future play? Or
I've heard like on bigger pockets, like that seems to be the progression that people make. And I don't know. It's tough because, again, you don't know what you don't know. And it's like, at this point, it's like you just see commercials suffering to an extent, right? And maybe that's more offices, but even like restaurants and stuff like that. Like you go downtown, like there's way more vacancies with restaurants, with going out of business and things like that, turnover. But obviously like a Walgreens type thing, and those make sense. Whatever it is, like just something easier. And I almost feel like it's eventually rolling the money into like a REIT. Right. You're getting, if it's 3.5 million or whatever it is, maybe it's more than that at some point, rolling it into something that you just get a return. Like the end goal, like maybe in 10, 20 years, I don't know, at some point, like when I get bored with it, is just lending money out. Right. Cause that's the most passive thing you can do to an extent besides a REIT, is you lend money to other investors that are looking to acquire properties or fixers or rentals. But if you roll the money into a REIT, right, you're just getting your quarterly check or your monthly check, and you're getting maybe your 10% return, and then you don't have to worry about it. But the bigger commercial stuff is definitely something to keep an eye on. I just don't know enough about
Who
it.
knows? Yeah. We'll follow up with you in 10 years, man. Thanks for coming in today, dude.
Yeah, for sure, man. This was fun.